I'm Eric Kane, the Director of ESG Research for Bloomberg Intelligence, and for this month's ESG News Bulletin, we'll focus on two key areas. First, we'll discuss a recent wave of exits from the Net Zero Banking Alliance and other coalitions that aim to help financial firms align their activities with net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Second, we'll discuss the wildfires in Los Angeles and how Bloomberg Intelligence continues to track the damages associated with climate events. I'll then be joined by Karen Brenseke, an ESG market specialist who will walk through Bloomberg Intelligence's BI Carbon Banks dataset for financed emissions and how the map function can be used to assess physical risks to assets. So since the beginning of December, the 6 largest banks in the U.S., including Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, and JPMorgan Chase, withdrew from the Net Zero Banking Alliance, or NZBA. The coalition, which is a subgroup of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, is a group of global banks committed to aligning their lending, investments, and capital markets activities with net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. After the exits, the alliance reports to have 136 members across 44 countries and assets of $57 trillion. While the banks have provided little on the reasons for their exits, prevailing opinion suggests a desire to head off potential litigation or other attacks given the Trump administration's policies. The question immediately surfaced as to whether these exits would impact goals that the banks have set to decarbonize their lending portfolios. And based on our analysis, those that have set financed emissions targets in line with International Energy Agency pathways may still pursue net zero ambitions. Citigroup, for example, said that it remains committed to reaching net zero, according to The Guardian. In another setback to a sector group within the Glasgow Financial Alliance for net zero, BlackRock exited the Net Zero Asset Managers Group, and the group subsequently decided to put its activities on hold as a result. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, had been a founding member, and in a similar move, the U.S. Federal Reserve withdrew from the network of central banks and supervisors for greening the financial system, or NGFS. The Federal Reserve had joined NGFS during Trump's first administration, with Fed Chairman Powell indicating how important it was to understand how best to assess the impact of climate change on the financial system. At BI, we'll continue to monitor how these defections impact corporate strategies and overall efforts to decarbonize. For example, our BI Carbon Banks analysis forecasts finance emissions for more than 50 top lenders globally. In that analysis, we find that an increasing number of banks are aligning their finance emissions targets with industry-specific 1.5-degree aligned pathways, but still just over 50% of the banks in the peer set have done so. In January, a series of wildfires erupted in Los Angeles, destroying more than 16,000 homes and buildings. According to AccuWeather, the fire's total economic loss, which includes costs of healthcare, business disruptions, and more, will be between $250 and $275 billion. While CoreLogic estimates that the Eaton and Palisades fires caused property losses between $35 and $45 billion. Although it remains impossible to pinpoint the exact role of climate change in these fires, several research agencies point to the fact that the hotter temperatures and drier atmosphere, which contributed to the fires, can be linked to climate change. Specifically, World Weather Attribution found that the hot and dry conditions were about 35% more likely because of climate change. At BI, we've developed our climate damages tracker, which captures damages by state in the U.S., by province in Canada, and by country for Japan and China. Based on our tracker, which looks at damages associated with insured losses, uninsured losses, crop damages, power outages, and more, the U.S. experienced roughly $880 billion in damages in 2024. We've also analyzed how a decrease in federal spending on disaster recovery has impacted states and the potential impact if President Trump were to overhaul FEMA and leave states to take care of disasters as he's promised. I'll now turn over to Karen Brenseke to walk through how you can use BI Carbon to understand finance emissions and how you can use Bloomberg's map function to assess physical risk to assets, including wildfires.
Thank you, Eric. Following the departures from the Net Zero Banking Alliance, many eyes are on the reduction of banks' financed emissions. On Bloomberg Intelligence's ESG dashboard, you can access BI Carbon datasets, including bank CO2 forecasts. On the Financed Emissions subtab, you can filter by North America to view lenders in the US and Canada alongside their historical Scope 3 financed emissions for carbon-intensive sectors. This screen also displays forecasts for 2030 and 2050, which are based on targets disclosed by these lenders. Here you can filter to view specific high-emitting sectors, including cement, coal, oil and gas, power, and steel. All figures on this screen are in thousands of tons of CO2 equivalent. By selecting the chart view, you can visualize how these banks are progressing towards their financing goals. In the qualitative subtab, you can filter to the North America region to view more information on bank targets, alliance membership, and plans to stop coal financing. As Eric mentioned earlier, wildfire risk is a concern for many. The function map allows you to visualize geospatial datasets in order to identify location-based risks, including wildfires. You can add layers of data, such as nearby physical assets, to augment your analysis with more geographical context. In this example, we're looking at Los Angeles fires active in the last 30 days, alongside power plants with a generation capacity above 30 megawatts and power lines in the area. In DS for document search, you can also identify companies discussing these risks of wildfires in company presentations and dig into the transcripts to understand resiliency measures being taken.
Thanks, Karen. And as a reminder to our viewers, more data and research related to these topics and much more can of course be found on Terminal by going to BI Space ESG. Stay tuned and we'll see you next month for February News Bulletin.